This is Kathy from Gadget Stop 321, and in today's video I'm going to be taking a look at my currently inked pens. I've got a Pilot E95S, a Quebeco Ale Sport, a Pilot Grants, a Pilot Custom Heritage 91, a Moonman M800 that I've been doing some work on the nib, and a Platinum Preppy that I've done some work on the nib previously, but I've kind of been studying it because there's some aspects of that nib that I'm wanting to replicate. First up, I've got my Pilot E95S. I haven't been using this pen much recently, and I like my fine nibs. This is a Pilot Fine, but the nib on this E95S, it's a different style than most Pilot fountain pen nibs. It's kind of unique, and it writes a little bit broader, so I haven't really found an ink that I enjoy using with it until I bought a bottle of KWZ Honey, and I am enjoying using this pen and ink combination. I used this pen and ink to write a letter to my daughter yesterday. She just started college, her freshman year of college, and things are going well, and so I wrote her a letter. Just a nice combination. Now, normally I like to write my letters on this royal linen. It's copy paper, but it's 90 GSM, and it's a linen texture. This is a really old package of paper. I bought it years ago to print out a resume on, but you can maybe see the linen texture there. But for this, even though this fine nib writes a little broader than normal, I find the texture on this paper is too unpleasant to use with most fine nibs, especially the finer Japanese nibs. So I just used some, is it the Rhodia? I can't remember. It's the upgraded paper, the cream colored paper. It's real satiny smooth. It's not this regular white Rhodia paper, and it was a very pleasant writing experience. I enjoyed that. Next, I've got my Quebeco Ale Sport. It's the golden espresso finish, and I cleaned out my Lilliput that I had inked up previously. It's got the Quebeco broad nib in it. This one has the Quebeco double broad. I love those Quebeco broad nibs for writing letters because it is so pleasant on this linen texture paper. And you can see I've got this AL Sport inked up with Diatramentis Jane Austen. It's a beautiful green ink. I used it to write a letter to my son-in-law. It was his birthday. I think he likes green, so I thought that would be nice to write his birthday letter with that. I've mentioned before, my Quebeco broad nib is a very nice reverse writer. This double broad, though, I've done a little work on it, a little smoothing. Yeah, the problem is it's just a little too dry, or a lot too dry to do very good reverse writing. It's decently smooth. I smoothed it a little bit, but It's just not a good reverse rider. It's too dry. So I'll probably switch out this double broad with the broad on my Lilliput, since that's the one that I use for many of my ink tests, and put the broad nib on the pen that I'm going to be using for regular everyday writing. Next, I've got my Pilot Grants. It's got a snap cap. Now, I bought this used, and let's see, the snap cap opening it doesn't feel very tight. It's decently secure. I suppose I'm not afraid of it coming off accidentally, but snapping it closed requires more force than unsnapping it. Now, I've got another Pilot Grants on the way. This one has a medium nib. I've got one on the way with a fine nib. I'm curious to see if it has the same feel to the snapping or the capping mechanism. Let's see. This has a 14 karat medium nib. It doesn't have the number on it like I've got, like my Stargazer is a number 3 Pilot nib. The Custom Heritage 91 and the Custom 74 are number 5 nibs. I need to compare this. I'm pretty sure this is a number 3 nib. I need to compare it to my Stargazer. This nib is very smooth with just the slightest amount of feedback. Now, Swan Illusion is normally a pretty pale ink, but my converter is, well, it's nearly empty. I think you can see a little bit of ink sloshing back and forth. That will last me a surprisingly long time. I keep saying when I do these currently inked videos, oh, this one's out of ink, I need to clean it out, and then I write for another week with it, especially with the fine nib pens. That I can sometimes write for 2 more weeks on just a drop of ink. But this one's very nearly ready to be cleaned out. But I've noticed my Swan Illusion ink is much darker, much more saturated since it's been kind of sitting in the pen for a while. I kind of like that combination. But that Swan Illusion is so pale and not really usable in many of my pens. I probably won't be buying a bottle of it since Mont Blanc inks are fairly expensive, but I have been looking for a substitute, and I'm thinking about giving Birmingham Sepia a try. It looked like a comparable ink color. Next, I've got my Pilot Custom Heritage 91. It has a fine nib. When I bought it, it had a medium nib in it, but I switched it out with the fine nib that was on my Custom 74, and this is a number 5 nib. I'm going to compare it to the nib on the Grants. The Grants nib looks more narrow, about the same length. I don't know. This might not be a number 3. I'll have to get the Stargazer out and compare it, because I think the Stargazer nib is noticeably shorter than this number 5 nib. Now this pen, I've been saying for a while I'm going to clean it out, and there's just like a drop of ink left in it. But I've been taking it out and about, taking notes. I've done quite a bit of writing with it. This fine nib just really sips the ink. I love this pen and ink combination for note taking. Once you have a Con 70 converter in there, just has a nice balance to it. It's a very lightweight pen. I've always been a poster, and for short bits of writing, this is fairly nice, but I just find it to be more comfortable unposted, and I can just write forever with this pen. And Tsuki-yo is such a nice match for it. I'm just very fond of Tsuki-yo anyway because it's a nice blue ink that's just a little bit different from, you know, your true blue, just enough to make it interesting. Next, I've got my Moonman M800. I took my traveler's notebook and this pen with me when I went with my daughter to help her move into her dorm. She stayed in her dorm room and I stayed at the hotel. So I was there by myself and I got to enjoy some nice journaling. I've kind of had trouble getting back in a routine of journaling. I've had a somewhat busier than normal summer, but that was just so enjoyable. There, no distractions, able to journal, and she was enjoying being off on her own for the first evening. So I was happy, she was happy, and my husband came up the next day to pick me up. But I've been working on this nib because I wanted a nib that would write broad in reverse and then fine writing regular. And I haven't been able to get it the way I want it. Originally, after my first bout of working on it, I was able to get the reverse writing to write a little broader, not a lot broader, just a little bit broader, but it was writing drier, and so the ink didn't look as good like here in reverse writing. It didn't look as good as the regular writing. The regular writing put down more ink and just looked more interesting. So I thought about working on it and tried to make it a little more stubby, and I'll just show you what I've come up with so far. And this is just a Jinhao nib. I think it's a Jinhao fine, not sure. And then here's the reverse. Let's see. It just writes too dry. And I think it's just a characteristic of this nib that, you know, a nibsmith might be able to do something to make it write a little bit wetter, but I think I'm done with this nib. I may try doing a little more research and starting over on another nib. I've got several of these Jinhao replacement nibs, but I love this ink. This is Tasha Hokusai-Benitsuchi. And I'm seriously considering getting a bottle of this ink. It just has so much character and looks so nice with this pen. I have several pens that I think it would look nice with. It's got a little bit of orange in it, a little bit of red. That's a color that I'm pretty fond of. I think it would look good with the E95S as well. And finally, my Platinum Preppy that I keep saying, oh, I'll be running out of ink in this soon. I'm not. I don't use this enough. This is going to be inked up for quite a while, but I have been studying the nib on this. This is one of the first nibs that I practiced doing some grinding on. I ground the regular writing into basically a blade. And the writing with it in you know, the regular orientation looks best when I'm writing large. But what I like most about this is the reverse writing has a stubby characteristic to it. And I've been studying this nib, trying to see what about that gives it that characteristic. Oh. I love that. If I could duplicate that with a fine platinum preppy nib in the regular orientation, I would love it. It's not too dry. I just love the slight bit of character it gives my writing. Because I've got another platinum preppy on the way, I ordered one of those. I don't know if they're like a special edition or whatever. The newer platinum preppies that have the colored barrel with the designs on them. I got a pink one that has the cherry blossoms on it, and they only come in fine nibs, and I'd love to be able to grind that into a nice subtle stub. So I'm looking forward to that. These are my currently inked pens. I've got more than I normally have inked up, but this is a nice amount to have, and I have a nice range of colors going here. My E95S with the KWZ Honey, that's a combination that I'm going to be using quite a bit, I believe. My Quebeco Ale Sport with the Diatramentus Jane Austen, I really like that. I like pretty much any ink I've tried so far in this double broad nib. My Pilot Grants with the medium nib, I'll finish using this sample of Swan Illusion, and then I'm going to try to find some more affordable substitutes for that. But I'm enjoying this quite a bit. I really like it on cream colored paper. My Pilot Custom Heritage with the fine nib, I'm loving it with Tsuki-yo. This is just such a nice combination. It's a nice note-taking pen and a really good note-taking ink. My Moonman M800, when I finish up this fill of ink, I'll probably pull the nib and put the Moonman nib back in it. It's not a very pleasant nib to write with, so I think I'm going to try to turn it into a stub nib. And I'm looking forward to my new preppy, my pink preppy coming in, and trying to grind it into something comparable to this stubby reverse writing. If you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.